We will go straight into it. There are no need for any other prayers or singing on the national anthem because we're still in the same meeting. I know Councillor Green is very upset with that, but
I'll save it for the carols.
thank you. It's and I would like to take this opportunity, however, to acknowledge a former mayor of Liverpool City Council, Mr. Cole Harrington, who is with his lovely wife Janice, who have joined us here today. We thank you. We thank you for your presence, and we hope our meeting can be as eventful as maybe some of yours were back in the day. So, thank you. All right, councillors. So we have there were two items. Did we get? We were in item Conf 06 where we left the meeting, and then there was still Conf 01, which was the rate modelling in Liverpool Civic Place, that are still outstanding. So we have, to refresh everyone, there were two motions, a motion and then a foreshadowed motion. Happy just to open up the discussion, whether I think ideally if we can aim to merge and have one motion. I think we don't seem to be too far away. But I'll leave it to the council, so whoever would like to kick off the proceedings. I want to flag with councillors as well that on another separate matter, with the events that have been happening with regards in Sydney in recent times, the terrible events, as well as in Melbourne with the bombing of the synagogue and other antisocial events that have taken place. I'm currently writing a mayoral minute, which I want to put forward to everybody. So whilst you're doing that, I will be listening, but I will be preparing that. Thank you. Any Councillor Rostevsky?
So, in relation to my motion, like you mentioned, if there's anything on my motion that you guys need to debate on, let me know. Does the public see this at all, this document? Do they know exactly what's in it or not really? Yeah.
No, the confidential is what they will see is a resolution.
Okay. Because obviously, I'd like to give them a bit of background if possible, because they're sitting and people online, they're probably wondering what this motion is about. I'm not going to breach any confidential items, but there's some interesting paragraphs here under the executive summary. It says the council's current financial position is unsatisfactory and requires urgent attention with immediate risks. And some of the other things that are mentioned in here, at 30 June 2024, last financial year, council exhausted unrestricted reserves and used 5.8 million from internally restricted reserves. Obviously that's not best practice, but I believe it's not against any...
Mr. Mayor, I just wonder whether or not we might go into closed session so that we can discuss freely and not need to walk a fine line.
Oh, look, I think we should stay in open session. I'm actually not walking a fine line because I'm only mentioning parts that I know that I can mention, because it tells you there.
It's in a confidential report, Councillor, through the chair. It's in a confidential report.
Yes, but I'm a very transparent person.
And parts of the confidential report are being read out in open session.
If you look at reasons for confidentiality, I'm not going anywhere near that. But the public have a right.
I put forward my desire to go into closed session.
Yep. So are you moving that under the section of the Act as part of in the book?
Correct.
That's in there?
Correct.
Can you just read that out, please?
Yes.
And I should say that, Councillor, just on your statements, when you look at that, because of the commercial nature of the comments that you have made, that clause is very relevant.
Well, if you have a look at reasons for confidentiality, there's 2 points on there on page 2441. Now, I'm not mentioning or going anywhere near those 2 points. I'm actually mentioning things that are actually public knowledge. This information was in the 30 June 2024 financials, and we all know that the council was budgeted for a $2.4 million surplus in 24-25. Now, based on the last meeting, we're heading for a deficit 6 times the worst. So the public have a right to know in relation to... Yeah. So the public have a right to know what's in this document because they're wondering, what are these guys talking about? Now, we can talk about things like cash at bank, and yes, council has a significant amount of cash in the bank, as we know, but they're externally restricted and can't be used for any other purpose. So the situation we find ourselves in is probably, if I look at the back page, point that talks about risk, I've never seen this before in a council document, the risk is deemed to be high. Now, the public need to know, they have a right to know, and I'm not going to talk any more about that, but I just wanted to give them a bit of background on the situation we find ourselves in, because it's serious stuff. I mean, this information or this situation we find ourselves in didn't happen overnight. We've been here since October was our first meeting, so this hasn't come about in the last 3 months. This was probably around prior to the election, which makes me sort of wonder, should this information
Mr.
have
Mayor,
been...
just a point of order. I'm not sure that that's just speculative. That's not contained in the report.
I uphold your point of order, Councillor. Councillor Rostevsky, if you want to keep it on point,
Yep.
yes, we want to be 100% being transparent. The resolution will be resolved. Councillor McNaught would like to go into closed session to go so she can, if you want to speak more freely about it.
No,
if
I'm
you
not
want to stay
speaking
confined.
anymore
but if-
about the document. I'm just generally speaking in relation to the issues. So
Yeah.
I'm not even looking at the document right now.
Okay, so
But-
now let's get back into it now.
Yeah.
You've moved a motion.
Yep.
You're now speaking for your motion.
My motion, yes. But one thing that concerned me, and
Oh, yeah, sorry, it's a foreshadowed motion, so you need to speak against the...
yeah, I'm speaking against the motion put up by Councillor McNaught, is it? Yep. One thing that I think we need to get more
Can
clarity.
we just scroll up, please? Yeah, if we can see the original motion, please.
One thing we need to be aware of, last council meeting, I actually spoke about one of the recommendations on here, number 3, and I was literally attacked saying, oh no, you can't do that, you can't do that. When I knew we were in that financial position that we had to do based on recommendation 3, and now here we are, and my point was right. But we need to have someone in here, whether it's legal counsel, that can step in and say, no, what he's saying is correct, because we're going to enter all these debates about what's legal and what's not legal, then to find out 3 weeks later, that what I was arguing about was actually legal. So I urge the legal counsel, if there is something that I'm saying and someone disagrees with it and they're saying that, no, you can't do that, step in and let us know the true position. Now, going back to what I'm saying, this is quite serious stuff. And we have a public inquiry. If you have a look at the terms of reference of the public inquiry, one of them was whether the governing body commands the confidence of the community. Now, this is where we're at the moment. We're basically at the crossroads. We're consistently having to come back
Mr.
with...
Mayor, point of order. We're not. I thought Councillor Rostevsky was speaking against the motion on the floor, and so far I haven't heard any commentary against the motion before us.
Yeah, agreed,
Well, I'm
Councillor
about to
McNaught.
say,
So if you can,
I'm just going to finish up. Well, we keep coming back having to sell assets, and Councillor McNaught's point is actually regarding that. We need to tighten our belts, not sell assets to meet the budget. There needs to be other avenues that we need to take.
Councillor, so yes, once again, if you've made your point, thank you. Do you have another speaker? Councillor Carney?
Yes, look, I've seconded the foreshadowed motion, so I'll speak against the motion raised by Councillor McNaught in one particular way, that the methodology in which this recommendation comes before this council is to obviously consider sources of funding. My view is quite specific at this point, and that is that we don't need... Look, Rome wasn't built in a day, and we've got a recommendation to source a certain amount of funds. I'm of the view that the recommendation to not sell assets, as outlined, if I can refer to them specifically, 5, 6 and 7, is not required at this point. And I'll talk specifically about recommendation number 5 in the recommendation, because that seems to be one that's
Yep. Can I just, before, sorry to interrupt you, but just to let it be clear to councillors that there is a number that needs to be achieved.
Yes.
And we need to achieve that number, right? If we do not achieve that number, there is a substantial knock-on effects that will come from that. So the objective today is, that's fine, whatever you want to do, as long as we get to that number.
Okay.
Right? That's, I just preface by that.
My position is this: the number that we need to get to, whether we get to it today or whether we get close to it today, my understanding of the quantum that the number raised in the foreshadowed motion is almost 90 to 95% there. I don't think it's bad practice that the foreshadowed motion in its quantum value is adopted, because what I say is this: if there becomes a point in time, for example, in February, and perhaps it's something that should be considered with either the initial motion and the foreshadowed motion, that we come back after whatever adoption is made today, we can come back and determine, in terms of through corporate support services, what steps are taken there and whether or not we actually need to consider going again in February. For example, the consideration of, and I'm only saying this, not this specific item, but to the tune of the value was raised in recommendation number 5. Because my view in terms of the figure, Mr Mayor, is the motion raised by Councillor Rustevsky is almost at that figure.
Yeah, I think it's, have you calculated it?
I think
What's the
it's
number then?
23.5 is my view.
You can talk that number, that's fine.
If we can talk about numbers, the foreshadowed motion, I'll take mine off.
Between 23 and 24 million, but we may be able to get to that if we work through a common motion together.
I don't think it equates that much from what our calculator. We can just calculate.
I think sorry, Mr. Mayor, I think the number that Councillor Rustevsky is referring to is not in the motion currently.
What do you mean by that?
There were other measures that have been discussed that that need to be added.
All right, well, that needs to be put in front of us because it's not the case.
Being
Yes, Councillor.
that we need
No.
to clearly discuss this in more detail, I again recommend, now that we've all given background on what's going on, that we move into a closed session so that we can talk about things and come to a position that we all know and agree that we need to come to.
Do you have a
I'm
seconder?
happy to read out
Do you have a
the
seconder for
reason
that?
why.
Councillor AJ? So-
That's a wise thing to do.
So you want to move that we go into closed section under, once again,
The section 10A2C point D1 of the Local Government Act, because it contains information that would, if disclosed, confer a commercial advantage on a person with whom the council is conducting or proposes to conduct business, and commercial information of a confidential nature that would, if disclosed, prejudice that commercial position of the person who supplied it.
all right. All right, there's been a motion that we move into closed session. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Against? Okay, declare it lost. Just be mindful, councillors, then you have to have the discussion very tightly then.
Can I, Mr Mayor, if I can kick us off and perhaps be specific about each recommendation and talk through it, and perhaps we can get some middle ground as we go through. Recommendation number 1 doesn't seem to be an issue in either the initial motion or the foreshadowed motion.
Well, number 1 is an operational matter, so
Correct.
it's actually has nothing.
It's a non-issue.
There's nothing effectively
It doesn't
to do with
require
this.
a discussion. Recommendation number 2, and I'd ask councillors, I'm happy for anyone who interrupt me if what I'm saying is incorrect, but recommendation number 2 comes out of receivable, if I can say, collections of a quantum that is forecasted. In my view, that particular forecast, in my opinion, it's a forecast, it's an estimate. In my view, there's a strong possibility that that particular figure can reach the quantum of about 5 million. There's no...
Look, once again, that's operational.
Yes.
Right? So you're ultimately talking about it's active debt recovery.
Correct.
Right? That goes fine. We've always we've always been slightly above the ratio, but I think that's a question for the CEO whether that can be achieved or not.
Wonderful.
Ultimately,
Let's
I'll
do
refer.
that. Yep.
Councillors, the expectation is that 2.5 is achievable by end of June, but not beyond that. Now, we can potentially get 5 in time because there is a substantial amount that's collectible, but it's the timing. We're looking to see what we can collect by the 30th of June, and I think that going beyond that amount is, we may, but we may not. That we think that that's a realistic figure.
Can I ask a clarification question? Sorry, if I may. So if we do exceed that, then that could be, that money could be reallocated to other things that we make the decision on tonight to be included in the list today. Is that correct?
If we do collect more than that, then that'll benefit both the cash position and the profit and loss position. But the reverse also applies.
Just to clarify on Councillor McNaught's point, and I think it's worthwhile raising, and whilst I agree with that completely, I certainly don't want that to be the position, whilst it's a great position to be in, I don't want that to be the position and then ultimately right now what we're doing is selling an asset and then we're end up in that desirable type of position. My view is that if it's, can we get a concrete estimation on a forecast historically the last year or two that will say, depending on what's outstanding, what's actually achievable? Is this just a guarantee of what we will get where we actually might get a little bit more? What's the genuine figure?
Well, Council, that is a genuine figure. I guess the other way that I'd look at it from if I were you is that we will be reporting to you regularly. We will obviously be reporting the December quarter, and that's normally end of February. If in between times, though, between quarters, we get information that's relevant to this exercise, we will relay that. If something comes up that we didn't budget for, that it's positive or negative, we will let you know when it happens. We won't wait until the quarter review. So I'm confident with these figures, and if they change, we'll let you know as soon as we know.
Thank you.
So therefore, Councillor Carney, so you're now at number 2, which is, we've been told by the staff that's a number that they can achieve.
I just wanted to ask the CEO through the Mayor, are we engaging in any active debt recovery, and are we giving people options of a discount to try and get this money in as quickly as possible rather than writing it off? It's probably better to take a small haircut than write 100% off.
Well, there's nothing to be written off. It's all secured. So we will get it. It's timing. And in terms of active recovery, that will start in the new year because it's pre-Christmas. So I think that answers your question.
Can I just say one further thing, and I think we'll get there quicker this way. Assuming, and this is probably going on a little bit of a tangent from the initial motion and the foreshadowed motion, but assuming if we're just looking at numbers, we've got recommendation 1, recommendation 2, recommendation 3, recommendation 4. The total sum of those recommendations from my quick figures get us to 25.7. Is that accurate? Sorry? 1, 2, 3 and 4 get us to 25.7. The way they're currently laid out, assuming the forecast for point 2 remains at 2.5.
22.7. All of it is 22.7.
5.
The first 4?
10.7 plus 7. 22.7. 22.7. Yeah, I added an extra 3 that I didn't want to add. That's my apologies. So I'd like to think that with those 4, we're there anyway, without agitating 5, 6 or 7. The reason I say that is because I'll just reiterate briefly my previous comments. I just don't want to jump the gun on moving on an asset that doesn't need to be moved on just yet. I don't think it's bad practice to come back in February to see where this total figure of 22.7 gets us to, and then we can see. And the other, that figure there, assuming there's some exceptions that some councillors want to take out of the number 3, assuming that there are some items there that people want to take out, part of the foreshadowed motion that I've seconded that Councillor Rostevsky has raised proposes a scope and investigation for some discretionary funds to be located in some other areas. I don't think certainly that that's bad practice to investigate to see if, number one, that'll get us closer to the $25 million figure, and twofold, it allows us to come back in February to see, number one, what the update is there, and number two, if there is any other required recommendations that may not be in this report. There might be another recommendation that isn't one of those three assets as outlined in 5, 6 or 7. Look, that's my position. I think it's a sensible one at this stage. I think it gets us close to that figure. If it resolves in that fashion, it'll exceed the $25 million figure. That's bearing in mind no exceptions to point 3, but happy to hear exceptions to point 3 because clearly they're raising both.
Just on that, the item 926, the 620,000, that's a public safety issue, and there's an obligation that we need to do something about that.
I completely agree. That's why I say that the exceptions to that, I'm happy for councillors to go through and see, what their points of concern are, because I believe they're one of the two that was raised in Councillor McNaught's motion. Yeah.
So that puts you at say 22, right? Yeah. Now the issue is, if you go and just talk about, I'll get to you in a moment, Councillor Hart, just about I'll go Councillor Hart, go for it.
I just want to know, I just have a question. As Councillor Rostevsky pointed out, the table at the back says risk is deemed to be high. If we do not resolve today the stipulated amount required, would that increase the risk on top of risk being already be high?
Councillors are aware from the report that the figure was calculated for a reason, and that figure will be used and advised to other bodies. It would be beneficial for us to have that figure. It'd provide more security if we had that figure. If we have less than that figure, then it may provide a signal that is not optimal.
Thank you. In light of that, I think Councillor Rostevsky said it might be worthwhile in collapsing this into one motion. And I think, as I said, we're 95% there. It might be a good time to perhaps take a quick recess so we can
before you do
condense
that,
this
or
consolidate it.
If you were to say the point about finding discretionary savings, right? That could happen. At the same time, what can also happen is the adoption of the recommendation number 5, right? Which is a sale of an asset that is dilapidated and has been dilapidated since 2015. Now, by agreeing to proceed with that, what will have to happen is it go on the market. Council then has to have a final resolution in probably, I would say, in April to whether it accepts the offers or does not accept the offers. So if you found the savings by then you don't have to accept the offers, right? But if you don't adopt that point 4, you can't say in April, oh, let's do that now because we're too late. So
I think that, sorry, I was just going to ask, and based on point 5, is that this is something that has been, flagged to have been disposed of for a while, and we haven't done it. And I was going to ask the question that you just put forward, Mr. Mayor, is that, if we do move forward with this and find those extra savings, and I thank staff for going through everything to get to where we are today, and the list is extensive, and I thank you for doing that. And I'm sorry that we're asking you to have another look again, but, this is like, having your cake and eating it too. We can get to where we need to be and still find those extra savings, and if we can, then we resolve to do that.
I don't think we need to do number 4. We have the numbers here already. The 10 points, sorry.
Sorry, Councillor Seff, you don't, because...
Well, we've got 22.7, with 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
4.
So
And then if you add the additional discretionary savings, that gets us to 25. We don't need to sell an asset.
0.3.
We've only just put our feet under the table and we're talking about selling an asset. I mean,
that's a point of.
I just, and I'm mindful that we're still in open session. I'm very mindful of that. This is an asset that has been on council's books for a long time. I just want to get that out there in the background for the community, that this is a dilapidated asset with no tenant and requires a lot of work. So this is not
It's not civic place, in other words.
Thank you. I didn't want to say that, but you did. Thank you.
No, it's not. So once again, councillor has once again in 2015, now almost 10 years ago, identified that it needs significant amounts of capital works to bring it up to speed. It's been dilapidated and nobody is using it. So ultimately, councillors, you want to keep it, find another couple of $1 million to fix it as well. Right? That's the reality. You've just built a brand new asset across the road. So it's once, I think I was put to it in the briefing session, if you live in a 3-bedroom home and you want to get a 4th-bedroom home, you normally sell the 3-bedroom home, use that money and get the 4th-bedroom home. We have done that. We've done that with this place. We've done that with that one in particular. So it's not like we're taking anything away. The community actually has extra stuff. You want to collect old rundown buildings, find a way to fund them because you also have a liability with those buildings and you want to increase that liability, increase it. Come up with a plan. So,
Can we take a recess to
Deputy Mayor,
workshop
do you
this?
wanna-
Sorry.
I was going to say that you're talking about that particular facility. That's currently leased and currently being used, from my understanding.
Sorry, Councillor Hart.
I believe from one of the reports that not the current acting CEO, but the acting CEO gave us, unrelated, said that the current, I don't think I can say this in an open session, but the amount that the income is basically nil.
To the CEO, maybe the acting director has something to say.
Through the CEO, we've been actively looking at relocation of the current tenant there because of the state of the building and the suitability. I also note that the community facilities strategy, which was adopted by council, also notes that CT Lewis is one of the. Sorry, shouldn't have said sorry. My apologies. Oops.
I think we're going to talk openly and then there's a lot of things that... Can we take the recess and so that nobody get in trouble? I think that's a wise thing to do. In African, they say, go and see your grandma. It means that you cannot talk openly to your father or your mother. So grandma will have a corner that you can talk there. So can we go and see grandma?
Recess is just councillors. Recesses are used for comfort breaks, right? And I know we've only been in the meeting for 40 minutes. The appropriate procedure, if you want to have a free-flowing discussion, we can move into a committee of the whole, right? If you want to discuss something that is confidential under the Act, you move into confidential. So to go in there to have a confidential discussion, right, in a recess, I'm not going to call that, right? So it does. It doesn't work like that.
Once again, I'd like to propose that we move into a closed session.
I'll second that.
Before we go into closed session.
All right, it's been moved that we go into closed session under the same provision. Second, Councillor Monaghan. Any discuss? All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. All right. Thank you, everyone. You will luckily be able to go and enjoy. Whilst we're asking you to leave our premises, you have wonderful food and beverage downstairs that we can thankfully host you this time. Please enjoy our Christmas party. We'll be with you hopefully shortly, because under section, I'll read it out officially. Council has to move into closed session. It's been resolved that way for item Conf 06. under provisions section 10A2CDI of the Local Government Act because it contains information that would, if disclosed, confer commercial advantage on a person with whom council is conducting or proposes to conduct business, and commercial information of a confidential nature that would, if disclosed, prejudice and commercial position of the person who supplied it. On being put, the motion was carried. All right. Thank you, everyone. We're now back in open session. I just need to read out the motion that was resolved by council. If we can please go up to the screen. The council agrees to remedial actions 1, 2, and 4. Agree to remedial action on 3, excluding 103,926. 3, agree to remedial action on 5, and that provides that A, council investigate $2.5 million in operational discretionary savings that do not impact the frontline staff. B, council staff also investigate any of the potential assets besides remedial action 5 that can be considered disposed of. C, if 2.5 found through 3A and 3B not proceed with remedial action 5, the council was moved by Councillor Hart, second by Councillor Green, and on being put, the motion was carried. Thank you, everyone. I want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, and we hope that you have a safe and blessed festive season. We'll look forward to seeing you in the new year. And I declare the meeting officially closed. Thank you.